Remember those eggplants that we pulled out of the market garden a couple weeks ago? Well, these are them, and they're looking a little bit past their prime. Like I mentioned in that video, eggplants don't really do well with long-term storage. These have been in our cold room, which is the temperature of a refrigerator downstairs. You can just tell they're starting to get a little bit wrinkly and not so great looking. So I've already been preserving eggplants all summer as they've been coming off. Of course, I've been eating them fresh. But primarily the way that I've preserved eggplant in the past is by slicing it and then sort of charring it in a skillet and then packing it underneath oil with herbs and garlic and salt and vinegar, and it's really delicious. But the problem is that's only one way to eat an eggplant. And you do get a little tired in the winter of eating the same things in the same capacities. So we took a big step on our homestead, a big step for me, which was investing in a Harvest Right freeze dryer. Freeze drying is a completely new way of preserving food for us, but I'm really excited to bring it to the homestead because it is really important, especially right now, that we make sure that we don't waste any of this food. This is a high value commodity right here. We've grown it and we want to enjoy it. We don't want it to go to waste. These are going to go to waste if I don't do something with them right now. So in the past, the way that we've preserved our food is by dehydration. We've also done it through obviously canning and some kind of vinegar or sugar, but those are really high input ways of preserving, meaning, well, not the dehydration, but the canning, you have to have a lot of honey, you have to have a lot of sugar, you have to have a lot of vinegar, or you have to have a lot of oil. So it kind of relies on some of these other things in order to preserve your foods well. The interesting thing about freeze drying is that it really doesn't rely on anything. It's just the machine taking the moisture out of it at such a capacity that these foods, I think what I read was that they'll last for like 25 years, which is a really long time. I don't really want to eat 25-year-old eggplant. I just would rather it last until, next spring or next summer. But alas, here we are. We're going to give it a go. So the idea is I'm going to save some of this eggplant for dinner, and I'm going to show you one of my very favorite ways to enjoy fresh eggplant. We're going to make a homemade eggplant Parmesan. But then secondly, we're going to take whatever's left from that, and we're going to cube it up, and we're going to try freeze drying it together, which is completely new. This will be its maiden voyage. So let's see how it does. Okay. This is all I have left here. So I'm going to actually pick out a couple of really beautiful big ones. This should be, plenty for the eggplant Parmesan. So that leaves me with all of this. And what I'm going to do is just cube it up, because my thought is if I freeze dry this eggplant in cubes, then I can just add those cubes into a soup or into a stew or into a stir fry or anything like that in the wintertime. And then in theory, it'll take moisture, stock, broth, water, whatever it is, and rehydrate just as if it never happened, ideally. So I'm thinking just some bite-sized cubes for our eggplants should do it. Now, one of the reasons I really wanted to finally just bite the bullet and learn how to use a freeze dryer is because space is limited. And even if you're not a homesteader and you don't have huge crops coming out of the garden, what I've sort of realized is with the flux of the way that things are going right now in the store, sometimes you can find things and sometimes you can't. And if you don't have a huge refrigerator to store things in, even things like lacto-fermented foods, which I store in glass jars in the freezer, you run out of space really quickly in your refrigerator. So one of the appeals to me is that this is just food that can be kept in our root cellar downstairs in glass jars with little oxygen absorbers, and it should be completely fine there. So this is really a low input way of preserving, meaning we're not bringing in any honey, we're not bringing any sugar, no salt, no vinegar. We're really not relying on anything else to preserve this food because we can't always get those things right now. Some of them are a little bit harder to find. We did a Thanksgiving theme for our cooking community for November next month, I couldn't find a turkey anywhere in my town. And so this is kind of a nice way of preserving if you can find a really good deal on something at the store, something perishable, maybe it's bell peppers or apples or whatever it may be. You can just buy them either when they're on sale or when they're looking really good in season, and then preserve them for when maybe you can't find them for the same price or can't find them as good a quality. I've been canning for a very long time, and I have been fermenting foods for a very long time, dehydrating foods for a long time. I mean, we've been doing that as long as we've had our little homestead, and it does feel quite strange to sort of bring in a new dance partner into your kitchen, a completely new way of really preserving the bounty, but it seemed like a very good year for it. We sort of find ourselves just tucking in more and more at home into what we have here and appreciating that bounty when it comes, trying to make the most of it. So we keep our freeze dryer in our root cellar, which sits right beneath our kitchen here. So come on down with me. Let's get this batch started together. See what happens. So actually getting this freeze dryer down here, it looks like a space machine, but it's made me kind of want to completely redo our root cellar, which I was inclined to do anyway. I really dream of this being a beautiful space with brick floors and floor to ceiling wood shelving. So that's kind of a pipe dream I have for a future project. So for now, this just sits on a pallet on the floor, though one day it'll have its proper place, I hope. This one holds about 4 trays, so I did one too many. Learning on the fly here. If there's anything you gather from this YouTube channel, I genuinely hope that it's, I don't know everything that I'm showing you. I am figuring so much of this out right alongside all of you. I hope that doesn't discourage you from giving it a try yourself. Start the garden, start cooking from scratch, start the homestead, buy the milk cow, just jump in the deep end. All right, so that's only 4. So we've got 1 lone tray up here. There's only so much you can do here. It's very simple. Shut. Start. Oh, wait 15 minutes before loading trays. Whoops. It's cooling the vacuum chamber, so we'll come down in 15 minutes. All right, the freeze dryer is running, and this is the very last of the eggplant here. I've gone ahead and sliced it, salted it, and then let it sit for about 30 minutes. And what that helps to do is pull some of the moisture out of the eggplant and also pull any of the bitterness that eggplant can sometimes have. So you can see these are kind of damp paper towels now. I've kind of gone through, pressed any extra moisture out because we are going to make a beautiful eggplant Parmesan. And I like my eggplant Parmesan to be made with really light and crispy pieces of eggplant, not stodgy or soggy or heavy. This is gonna be probably unlike most eggplant Parmesans that you've had before. And salting, letting it sit, and then pressing it dry is the first step. I've also got my oven preheating to 425 degrees with some baking trays in it, because we're gonna pan fry this eggplant, not on the stove, but actually in the oven. But before we do that, we're gonna go through a 3-step system here. This looks complicated. It's really not that complicated. This is also my very favorite way to eat eggplant. So I have a little bit of all-purpose flour, einkorn all-purpose flour, and black pepper. That's step 1. Step 2 is going to be a bowl with 4 eggs in it. is exactly the kind of food you want to eat on a day like this. A little dark, moody out. Okay, step 2, our eggs. Then step 3 is 2 cups of breadcrumbs with 2 cups of almond flour, or just almonds that you've ground really fine, good pinch of sea salt. And then I'm gonna add in just a little bit, maybe a 1/4 cup or so of a shredded Parmesan cheese. So this is all about building layers. We're essentially building a lasagna, but instead of using noodles, we're using really beautifully baked, crispy eggplant. Okay, step 1. So we're gonna take some of our eggplant pieces here, maybe 8 or so at a time. Pop them into our Ziploc bag with our flour. You guys remember the 90s shake and bake chicken? That's what we're doing, but with eggplant. I remember when people had shake and bake. I thought they were so fancy. We never had it. All right, dust off any excess flour, then into the egg mixture, like so. You can see this. Shake off any extra. This is a light coating, nothing too thick. And then into the breadcrumbs. Okay, just like so. I'm gonna put this on a wire rack and just keep on going with all the remaining pieces.
I would like to invite you to join the Elliott Homestead cooking community at cook.theelliottHomestead.com. This is for home cooks out there who would love some new inspiration, ideas, and motivation to get going in the kitchen. Each month, I create 5 brand new recipes inspired by what is in season around our farm. But don't worry, you don't have to have a farm to enjoy this beautiful food. You can have these recipes delivered to you digitally or physically if you live within the United States. Recipes will range from entrees to side dishes to desserts, breads, vegetables, salads, everything in between. Then I'll guide you through the recipes with a long, in-depth cooking video, showing you new skills and encouraging you as you give these recipes a try in your own kitchen, whether you're cooking for yourself or you're cooking for a crowd. The Elliott Homestead cooking community is here to inspire and nourish your family. We're going to teach you to bake, to use sourdough, to try new ingredients, to really fall in love with good food again. Visit cook.theelliottHomestead.com for more information.
You know, there's so many foods like eggplant that when you start homesteading or gardening, having a vegetable garden, or even shopping at farmers markets, sometimes you have to learn how to love them. How do you like to eat them? Different flavors you like to put with them, because not a lot of us grew up eating a lot of these things. But if you're going to have a garden, and especially if you're going to preserve some of that garden for the winter months, then that means you kind of have to learn how to cook things in a new way. I say embrace the challenge. And if you don't like a particular vegetable, I've heard that you should try eating it at least 17 different times in 17 different ways to find a way that if you like it, and if you don't like it after those 17 times, cook different ways. Then you can say, I legitimately do not like this vegetable. So even if you don't like eggplant, I really would encourage you to give this a try. All right, I think that's it. Let me wash my hands, and then we're gonna pull out our hot oven trays. Okay, my oven is hot. My baking trays are preheated, so they're nice and hot too, which is important because we want the eggplant to be nice and crispy and golden. And the way that we do that is a nice hot oven and a real generous amount here of olive oil. Maybe 3 tablespoons per sheet. That smells good. All right, now the eggplant's gonna take about 30 minutes to cook. So this does require just a little bit of forethought on your part. So what I'm gonna do now is just move the eggplant to the baking tray. Just like so. Make sure that they have lots of space. That's going to make a difference in how they fry up, which is why I'm using 2 trays here. You know, there are certain foods that really are only made for somebody if they really love you. And to me, lasagna has always kind of been one of those dishes just because there's a lot of ingredients, there's a lot of layering, takes a while to bake, and I think eggplant parmesan probably falls into that same category. Even though it can be easily made on a weeknight, it's not something that we typically see on a weeknight, but it is worth a little bit of effort. Okay, now I'm going bottom and middle, 20 minutes on one side, 10 minutes on the other side. It should be nice and golden. So if you're not seeing that, then crank your heat up and really get it golden before you pull them out. Then we'll work on layering the Parmesan when it's all done. Okay. All right, the hard work is done. This is the easy part and the fun part. So I keep jovial tomatoes on hand. I use them all the time, love them. These are their crushed tomatoes. So what we're gonna do now is just layer. You can see I've got about 9 by 13 pan here. I'm gonna be working with probably about 4 cups of tomato sauce, maybe just a little bit more. I don't really measure, but you're free to measure if you'd like. All right, listen to this. You hear that? Sounds really light and crispy, and that's what we want. So I'm gonna try and kind of piece this together. These aren't too hot, actually. I mean, this is just beautiful. I'm so hungry for this. I've been craving it all season, but just have not gone to the effort to make it. All right, one more little piece here. All right, now I have about 8 ounces of a nice mozzarella here. So I'm gonna put a good layer of that over the top of the eggplant, just like so. And I just so happen to have about a cup of ricotta in the refrigerator right now. I don't have other plans for it. So I'm going to sprinkle that in as well. Now, even though this takes a little bit of effort, the good news is that you can do a lot of it ahead of time and have it assembled before you need to bake it. Oh, tomato. So we should go tomato, eggplant, cheese. Tomato, eggplant, cheese. To me, this is just maximum comfort food. All right, another layer, here we go. So we probably should only get 2 layers, so I'm gonna try and squeeze in as much eggplant as I can here. I used about 4 pounds of eggplant, 2 large eggplants. And it looks like it'll be just the right amount. Look at this. It was meant to be. That is about as perfect as it gets. More tomato sauce. I don't know if I can open this now, though. This is why my aprons get disgusting. Good layer of tomato sauce on top because it's all going to bake down anyway. And then my very favorite cheese in the entire world goes on top. I'll add just our teeny last little remnants here of mozzarella, our last little remnants of ricotta. These flies are really interested in the eggplant. Go look at them. Here's the truth about living on a farm, you guys. There are always flies. They never die off. They never go away. They're here for the rest of your life, the end. All right, Parmesan, right over the top. Real Parmesan, the good stuff. Hang on. I've now made a proper mess, but the good news is I have time to clean it up while this bakes in 425 degree oven. But I'm gonna top it off with some black pepper. Black pepper has a very distinct flavor. I think oftentimes we think about it just pairing with salt, but that's not really true. It has its own special flavor, like a spice. And just a little bit of garlic powder, just a touch. All right, this is ready to go in the oven now, and I'm gonna clean up this mess.